Hello, welcome to our webinar today on Southwest Minnesota Arts Council's public art grants for fiscal year 2024, which for us runs from July 1st of 2023 through June 30th of 2024. I am Carolyn Koska. I'm the grants administrator here at Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, and I'll just run through what we're going to talk about today. I'll talk just briefly about Southwest Minnesota Arts Council. We'll look at the guidelines for this grant program. We will go over to our website and look at what resources are available for you there. Then we'll go into our grant system and walk through the application. And we'll finish up talking about the grant process, or what happens after you have submitted your application. For now, I'll ask people to mute. We'll stop a couple times for questions. Also, feel free to type a question in the chat at any time. And then at the end, we can open things up and talk more about your specific projects if you'd like. So the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, or SMOC, is a nonprofit organization committed to promoting and encouraging the development of the arts in the 18 counties of Southwest Minnesota by serving as a source of funds and technical services, which enable local organizations, educational institutions, and individuals to sponsor, create, and promote the arts in their communities. So here is our region down in the southwest corner of the state. We are one of 11 regional arts councils that cover the whole state of Minnesota and work to get our state arts funding out into all those corners. So most of our funding does come from the state of Minnesota. We have an allocation from their general fund, but the majority comes from the Arts and Cultural Heritage or Legacy Fund. We also receive some funding from the McKnight Foundation that we use for our grants for artists, and also from memberships and donations from around our region. To be more specific about what that service region is, it covers 18 counties, which include Big Stone, Chippewa, Cottonwood, Jackson, Candy, Ojai, Lac-qui-Parle, Lincoln, Lyon, McLeod, Meeker, Murray, Nobles, Pipestone, Redwood, Renville, Rock, Swift, and Yellow Medicine, and 2 tribal nations, Pajutazizi, or Upper Sioux Community, and Chanchayapi, Lower Sioux Community. And we acknowledge that this region occupies the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Dakota people. Our public art grants are open to 2 types of organizations: 501c3 nonprofits and units of government, which would be like a city, county, or tribal government. If your organization doesn't have its 501c3 status yet, you can apply using a fiscal sponsor. And a fiscal sponsor would be an organization that does fit that eligibility, and they would receive your funds for you and be ultimately responsible for the outcomes of the project. You'll need to come up with an agreement with that fiscal sponsor organization, just spelling out how that relationship is going to work. And you'll need to attach that to your application, and someone from that fiscal sponsor organization will also need to sign your application. The intent of this public art grant program is to support large-scale physical public art projects that will leave an arts legacy in our region through arts access in the community and a continuing impact. Previously, this program was Art Legacy Project, and in that form also allowed for some other large-scale projects that were not physical public art, but we've made that change this year to focus just on those physical type of public art projects, which could include things like murals, sculptures, or other physical public art. People have done things like decorate their utility boxes in their community, decorate benches that are available in public spaces, things like that. So any kind of physical public art project. I'll also point out we have our quick support for organizations grants, and these can help you fund some of your planning that you may be doing for a public art project in order to get you ready to apply for that large grant. And some of the things that you could do under that quick support grant would be getting input from your community, doing the whole process of requests for proposals from artists, figuring out what the costs might be involved in this project, looking into some feasibility or sustainability of even doing this. So that is a good option to help you kind of do some of the planning you'll need in order to get ready to apply for the public art grant. So the public art grant is available for up to $20,000. Previously, since the beginning of the pandemic, we had taken away the requirement of a cash match across all of our programs, but we are bringing it back this year for this public art program. So what that means is if, for instance, your project cost exactly $20,000, you could request from us $16,000, and then your organization would need to come up with the remaining $4,000 or 20% of that on your own. And then the quick support for organizations grant is available for up to $2,500, and there is no match required for that. Another new thing this year is we have started a limit of the amount of funds an organization can receive per year across all of our grant programs. We're wanting to spread out our funds among more organizations. So you can receive a maximum of $20,000 per year across all of our grant programs. This particular grant, public art, if you request the full amount, is $20,000. So that would be the one thing that your organization could receive for the year. So it would require a little bit of planning if you were deciding to do, for instance, the quick support and the public art in the same year. You would be able to request a little bit less for that full public art grant. And this $20,000 limit does not include if you are receiving operating support from us. That would not be counted toward that total. Some eligibility things to be aware of. These are all things that are not eligible for these public art grants. Your organization's regular programming or recurring projects, requests for new building construction, purchase of real estate, or something going towards an endowment, funding a staff person, a project that doesn't have an art focus. Also ineligible would be activities of a for-profit project, organization, or business, educational projects within a school system, activities that are not open to the public, activities that take place outside of Minnesota. We are using state funds here, and that is a requirement of those funds that everything takes place within the state. Also not eligible is the religious socialization of the participants or audience. Fundraising events. In other words, the grant funds should enable your project to break even, not to make a profit. If you are already receiving operating support from us, you cannot include prorated operating type costs in the budget for this project. Also ineligible are payments of debts incurred before the grant begins, using grant funds to match another grant from us, or if you have a past due final report still out there. So this is kind of an overview of some of those eligibility things. Take a look at the guidelines to make sure you have not missed anything. As far as deadlines for this grant program, we have one deadline per year for the public art program. And this year it will be on December 13th. And the earliest day that you could start your project is February 1st of 2024. And then for those quick support grants, there's a deadline the first of the month, August through May. And then you could start your planning project the first day of the next month. So if you applied by December 1st, you could start your planning January 1st. And for both of these, you'll need to submit by 4:30 p.m. The system will not allow you to submit after that time. You'll need to choose a start date for your project. Check again in those guidelines for the earliest allowed start date, whether that's for the public art or the quick support. You can't start any activities toward your project before that start date. So no advertising, no purchasing any supplies, no paying your artist. You can't spend any funds before that date. You'll also need an end date, and make sure to give yourself plenty of time so you can finish up your project, maybe have some time to do some evaluation. And then projects that are awarded this year need to be finished up by June 30th of 2025. So that would give you, if you went that far out, that would give you about 1.5 years to complete your project. You'll need to have 2 people connected with your application. One is a project director, whoever is really going to be most involved in the day-to-day of the carrying out this project. And then the authorizing official, and that would be somebody who has authorizing power for your organization, like your president, treasurer. These need to be 2 different people, and both of them will need to sign all of your grant documents, including the application. And we'll stop now for a minute if there are any questions. Okay, now we're going to head over to our website. In case you haven't been on our website for a while, we did do a big update over the summer, so I'll just point out where a few things are. Everything you need will be under this grants tab, including log into the system right there. So that'll be a quick way to get to that. And then we're going to go over to our public art grant. Here we are. So as you look at this page, we've got our guidelines right here, and this is where you'll want to look just to make sure of some of those eligibility things. We've got our whole list here, so make sure to check that and check out the rest of the guidelines as well. We've got all of the important dates here, the deadline, when things will be happening in the review process, and then your earliest start date. After today's workshop, after a few days, if you come back here, there'll be a video recording of tonight's workshop, so you can refer back to that. And then here we have just some of the materials. We have the application questions in a Word document. Some people like to do their draft and then a Word document first and then paste into the system later. We've got a budget form, scoring criteria. You can even take a look at the kinds of questions you'll need to answer in your final report. Before we dive into the grant system, I just want to point out a couple other things. Under this grants help, if you go to the workshops and assistance page, it shows you all of the different ways that you can get help or get questions answered about our grants. We have grant support open office hours the second Tuesday of each month. You can come to our office in Marshall between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Just drop in and talk through project ideas, or you could work on your application with us nearby to answer your question, or if you need some help preparing some work samples, things like that. So you can drop in to our office in person then. We have some grants Q&A sessions. Our next in-person one will be coming up in Fairfax on November 15th. And we also have some virtual sessions. The next one coming up is December 5th. So you can register for either of those. You can learn about all of our grant programs, ask questions about any of them in those sessions. You can grab some time on my calendar just by following this link if you'd like to meet by phone or Zoom or in person at our office. And then down at the bottom here is another place where we've got the videos from these past grant workshops. So the one from tonight will be posted here in a few days as well. We also have our credits and resources here if you want to get your grant credit lines and logos that you need for your project. There's some sample documents, you can see what a contract looks like. If you want to look at a sample fiscal sponsor agreement, those kinds of things are available here as well. So we're going to go over to our grant system. And if you have an account in the system already, you would just log in. If you are totally new, you would to create new account here and set that all up for yourself. But if you're not sure if you or somebody else from your organization already has an account in the system, just contact us and we can get that figured out for you. So I'm just going to log in here. And the first thing you'll want to check, especially if you ever work as a grant review panelist for us, is make sure you are on the right role here and that you're under your applicant role. So here's the applicant dashboard. This is where you will come when you log in, unless you are coming in for the first time, you'll come directly to this apply page. So we're going to go there. This lists all of the grant programs that we have currently open. So you'll need to scroll through and find, here's our public art. If you want to just take a look at the application without starting anything, there's this preview button. Otherwise, if you're ready to get started, you can click apply. And I'll point out a few features at the top here before we really get into the application. We do have Google Translate embedded into the site. So if you would like to work in another language, you can choose that here, and that will translate the interface and all the questions for you, and you can work in that language. We have this copy previous answers button. You can, if you've done an application in the system before, it will give you a list of those applications and you can copy over any answers to questions that are the same between those two applications. That can be a good head start for you, especially on some of that organization information that doesn't change much from time to time. Then we also have the collaborate button. And this allows you to invite someone to work on the application with you. You would just put in their email address here, choose what level of permission you want to give them. In the message, you can just put in whatever it is you'd like them to do. If you need them to proofread things for you or put in some audience numbers, or maybe invite someone to come in and sign the application. So you would just invite them, they'll get an email and they'll just need to follow a link. And if they don't already have an account in the system, just create a quick password and be able to come in and work on the application as well. So you'll start out with a name for your project. There's some examples here, and then the amount that you're going to be requesting. You'll probably want to wait to fill this in until after you have filled out your budget form. We've got some links to some of those documents here that may be of help to you. And then you'll start out describing your project. It does let you know there'll be some space for details on certain things later in the application, so not everything has to go in this first field here. Here's where you'll enter your start and end dates. If you're planning any public events related to this project, you can put that information here, and then we can post that on our area arts calendar. So that's important to provide us with that information. And then you'll talk about the artists or other programming involved in your project. What is your artistic vision behind this project? Is there something that you are wanting to say with this project? Is there a particular aesthetic that you're going for? And here's where you'll talk about the artists that you have chosen for the project. It's very important that you have gotten to the stage where you have chosen your artists, and hopefully they have also done some sort of mock-up of what this public art piece is going to look like. So why have you chosen them? What is their background? Really, what was your rationale or process for making this decision? Then you'll put their resume here and then some samples of their work. There are some guidelines for what to attach, along with some links if you need to resize some things or combine things into one file. So we've got several upload fields, and then you would describe what it is that you've attached there, along with several link fields. So those would just be samples of that artist's work, maybe some photos of the space where this is planning to be put, and what that mock-up of what's planned for that public art piece. Then we ask you to think about the underserved or underrepresented in your community. What groups might be underserved or underrepresented? You could think about things like race or ethnicity, language, socioeconomic level, ability, etc. And if you need some help kind of thinking about what those groups might be, the Minnesota Compass is a great resource. It has a lot of data, more than you might find on the most recent census. You can type in your community here. We'll pick one. And it's got a lot of information about people in your community. So here we have age. We have some information on race and ethnicity. If you see something here that says suppressed, it means that it's either a very small number or there's a big margin of error in that piece of data, but nothing to be concerned about. Information about language, about disability status, transportation, all kinds of things for you to think about as you are looking at who might be underserved or underrepresented in your community. So once you have defined those groups for your community, then we want you to think about what are some specific things you are going to do to reach out and involve at least one of those groups so they can participate in the project. As we say here, saying our activities are open to everyone doesn't answer that question. We're really looking for specific actions for those specific groups. So it could be things like including members of that group in your planning. Maybe you're translating some materials that you're putting out. Maybe you're providing transportation, things like that. So we're really looking for a specific effort to include some of those underserved or underrepresented people. And we realize that your organization may already consist of or serve members of that group, and you can explain that here as well. We also want you to think about how the project will be accessible to those with various disabilities. Please think beyond just mobility. And then if your organization does have an ADA access plan, how does that inform your planning for this project? Then we want you to think about some impact and outcomes. Why is this project important to your community? And then what are some specific impacts or changes that you're expecting this will have in the immediate future during the grant period? So might there be some changes that would take place to the artistic skills, knowledge, attitude, or behavior of community members, participants, artists? So specific things that might happen in the future that is within the grant period. And then how could you measure or prove that those changes have taken place? Is there some way that you can gather some feedback or results? If you're doing a survey of some sort, what kinds of answers would tell you that this has been a successful project? And then this last question is kind of beyond what might be measurable during the grant period. How will the project provide sustainable arts access or an arts legacy in your community over the next 5 years? Do you have plans to capitalize on this in future events or activities? How will the physical artwork be maintained? So just thinking a little further ahead, and that you don't need to think about measurements so much, just with the more immediate impacts. So there's a spot here if you are using a survey or have some questions for focus groups, things like that, you could attach that here along with some expected audience numbers. Then with the key personnel, besides the artists we talked about earlier, what other personnel are playing a large role in the project? This probably would end up being your project director, the one who's really organizing all of those pieces. So what are they responsible for? And then you can either upload a resume for them or provide some information about their experience. We also are asking you for some details about your planning schedule for the project, your marketing and publicity plans, then community support. How are community groups supporting this project? Are there donations, in-kind things, space, people being involved? Just what support is coming from the community? Next is our budget section, and we have this Excel form here to fill out, which is very helpful as it does some calculations for you, but you are also welcome to create your own budget. But we'll take a look at this Excel form. So you can put your project name up here and then start listing in their cash cost section some of the expenses you know you're going to have. You could type in there and we'll put some numbers in here. All right, and you'll see it's totaling for you as you go. And then this will help you figure out how much you need to contribute for your cash match. So it takes this number and calculates 20% of that. So this tells us we need to come up with at least $2,900. So let's say we had a donation of our $2,900. And then it tells us it takes the cash cost minus the cash match and tells us our request cannot exceed $11,600 or $20,000, which is the max. And it says we can do whatever is less. So we can request $11,600, and then it tells us our profit is 0, which is what we're aiming for. So let's say our project is a little more expensive. And now it tells us our cash match needs to be $5,900. So we'll add that. But then it tells us our request cannot exceed 23,600 or 20,000, whichever is less. So here our 20,000 is less. However, we've got a negative number down here in our profit. So that means we need to come up with $3,600 more in our income. So we, in this case, because the project was more expensive, we would have to provide more than a 20% match for this. And now our profit equals 0 again. So you would fill this out, save it, and then upload it here in the application. We've got the budget narrative field. And this is just some space if you want to provide some more details about things from that budget spreadsheet that didn't fit on there. We ask you to tell us a little bit about your organization and the types of programming that you offer, some information about your board, including a list of members. Then we're collecting some data. As it says here, this is just information that we need to gather to pass along to the state. This section doesn't really have any bearing on your application, just some information we need to collect. So our most recently completed fiscal year, and then depending on your type of organization, it'll bring up a different question. If you are an arts organization, your total expenses for that year that you entered up here. If you are a non-arts organization, your just expenses for the arts during that year. Some demographic information, and then we just want some information about what kinds of opportunities you took advantage of assistance that we offer. And then here's where you'll enter information about your project director, your authorizing official, who was the grant writer in case we need to contact you with some questions. And then if your organization is using a fiscal sponsor for this project and you choose yes here, then you'll have space to enter their information. And then here is where you would attach the agreement that you have between your organization and the fiscal sponsor. And then we've got some signatures down at the bottom here. And again, this is a great place to use that collaborate button to have, say, your fiscal sponsor come in and sign. So this will be auto saving for you as you work, but you can also click this save application button, which we'll do in a second, or the submit when you're ready. But if you click this save button, it will give you a list of all of the required questions that you still need to get to. In this case, since we haven't done anything, it's got everything, but this can kind of help you track your progress. And if you want to keep working, you can just click continue. But we're going to go back to our dashboard. And you can see now here is this application that we just started. And you can just click this link to go in there and keep working. And this is the same place where you'll come back if you're awarded a grant to access your contract and your report. And we'll pause again in case there are any more questions at this point. Not hearing or seeing any questions come in, we will move on with some tips on working on your application. It helps to really think ahead to choose the best time to apply if you're going to be doing one of those quick support planning grants, or which might be the best year to do the big public art grant. Make sure that you read the guidelines and the criteria carefully. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time to work on your application in case you find there's some more things that you have to figure out or to have time to ask questions. Just give yourself as much time as you can. Also, you'll have seen in the application that a lot of the questions have kind of those sub questions with all the bullet points. So make sure that you are getting all of those covered in your answers. Always good to keep your answers nice and clear and concise. No need for fancy grant terminology, just everyday language is fine. It's also good to assume that the people reviewing the grants don't know anything about your organization or your community or your project. So be careful about putting in acronyms without explaining what they are or talking about programs without explaining. Just assume they don't know anything. And finally, don't hesitate to contact us. We are here to help you. So if you run into any questions, let us know. So some ways that you can get assistance as you are working on things, you can always talk through your project with us before you even get started, make sure everything is eligible, you're in the right program. You can ask us any questions about the application. You can actually have us review a draft of your application before you submit it, and we can let you know if you're missing anything or if we think something might sound confusing to the panel. That's a really good option to take advantage of. So as you get your draft together, you can contact us and let us know you have something ready. We can go in and take a look before you submit and get back to you with some feedback. There is a date. You'll find it in the guidelines or on the website, kind of cutoff for when you can request that draft review. So make sure to pay attention to that. So once you submit your application, the first thing that happens is staff will review that for eligibility and completeness. And if we find at that stage that there's anything missing or any eligibility concerns, we'll contact you and you'll have 48 hours to remedy whatever that is. And that is SMOC staff's kind of last connection with your application. We don't have any say in who gets funded or not. We're really here as your advocates to help you have the best application that you can have. So at that stage, the group of applications will go on to a panel of individuals from around our region, and they will discuss and score the applications based on the criteria for this program, which we'll look at in a second. And then their recommendations go to our board of directors who make the final funding decisions. So the criteria for this public art program, first of all, the artistic quality and merit of the project. That is worth 46% of your score. Again, why it's really important to have your artist all figured out and that mock-up of what this project is going to look like. Then they'll be looking at the impact this will have on participants and audience, 28% of your score. They'll look at how you are reaching the underserved and underrepresented. That is 13% of your score. And then your ability to accomplish the project. So looking at things like your budget and your planning timeline, things like that, also 13% of your score. And if you are looking in the guidelines, it'll go into more details on each of these criteria, so you get a good idea of what the reviewers will be looking for. After the panel has scored, you could get a couple additional percentage points added onto your score. We call them our priority points. If you are a first-time applicant to us, if your organization is led by or primarily serving BIPOC or LGBTQ communities or people with disabilities, or if you are from a county that has not been receiving as much funding from us lately. So you could get one additional percentage point in each of these areas if that applies for you. So if your grant is awarded, you'll complete a contract with us, and then you'll be paid out that full award amount after we have received the contract. You'll need to acknowledge the grant on all of your marketing that you do about this project. There'll be a credit line in your contract that you'll need to use You may also need to use this Minnesota Legacy logo depending on the source of funds awarded to you. But all of this information will be sent to you so you'll know which credit line, which logo, etc. Then we know things happen in the middle of projects. So if you're noticing that things are starting to not go quite as planned, please contact us and we can help you get some of those changes made. We might be able to extend your project end date or approve some changes to your budget, things like that. So no need to be worried if things suddenly start not going as planned. Just please contact us and we can help you work through that. You'll have a final report due 60 days after the project end date that you've chosen. And it's a good idea to start taking a look at that just when you're starting your project, just to know what kinds of information to gather and questions that you'll need to answer. So that is it for our public art grants today. Was there anything anybody wanted to talk about a specific project? All right, well, thank you for joining us tonight and feel free to contact us if you have any questions. Have a good evening.